Hello and welcome back to the Lore Raider, and more importantly, my Metroid challenge runs. So let's talk about the missiles real quick. Missiles have, from the very first Metroid game, always been a key part of Samus's arsenal. You see, in most of the 2D games, they combine being hard-hitting weapons with a respectable fire rate that you'd use to reliably take down a boss. However, what if you decide to take away the missiles entirely and be forced to primarily rely on beams, which when uncharged, have a much higher rate of fire, but oftentimes can't even scratch higher level enemies and bosses, and when charged, outdamage even the missiles, but with an abysmally slow fire rate? Well, I decided to torture myself today, so join me as we ask the question, can you beat Super Metroid with no missiles? The rules are simple. With the exception of opening doors, the missiles can never be used to kill an enemy. This means every other weapon, including the various beams and bombs, are allowed, and I lose the run if I am ever forced to use the missiles to progress. Without further ado, let's delve in. The early game was fairly uneventful. The Ceres space colony is always free as one expects at this point. I only have the basic beam shot at this point, and eventually Ridley will flee, start the self-destruct timer, and as we escape the timer, hop onto our gunship, which, by the way, is called the Thrush Eterna unofficially, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, we hop into our gunship and make our way planet-side on planet Zebes. Now on Zebes we have the standard opening, collecting the early missiles for the doors will open later into the game, killing the pirates that try to ambush us with consummate ease after we get those missiles with the beam shot, and before you know it, we're fighting the first mini-boss, the Torizo. My brain wasn't working at the time of recording, and I accidentally started this run by killing Torizo with the missiles, forcing me to reload and do it again. Now Torizo is the perfect example of the type of run this will be. As you see, it takes quite a while for me to whittle away at Torizo's health, and the longer a fight goes, the more opportunities there are to be damaged. However, it is still just Torizo after all, and we win handily, making our way to my favorite area of the game, and that being Green Brinstar. In Green Brinstar, I was worried early on about the prospects of confronting Spore Spawn. I have never used a beam on him, and I was worried that he could only be hurt by missiles. So, to hedge my bets, I used the Mock Ball trick I managed to learn to get across this gap early in the game, grabbing an early reserve tank along the way, and ultimately grabbing the super missiles, meaning that we can skip the boss. But to be sure, just for fun, I made it to his boss room anyway, making sure to grab my first real upgrade, that being the charge beam along the way, and went to see if he could be killed with the beams. Turns out Spore Spawn can be killed, but he is a painfully slow boss. You see, you have to hide in a corner, slowly charge the beam, and you get one shot off before he closes up again. But inevitably, we do kill him, grab the extra super missiles, and make our way to Red Brinstar. Red Brinstar, of course, is very simple, as the game really hasn't opened up yet for exploration. However, it does contain my next big upgrade, that being the hard-hitting Spazer Beam, which will be crucial in a moment. We of course do the standard play as you expect of getting the high jump boots down in Upper Norfair, before heading back to Brinstar where we do the very important business of teabagging this Galactic Federation fodder and confronting Kraid himself. Kraid presented a bit of a problem. You see, he can only be hurt in his mouth, but to open his mouth, you need to either hope he roars at you, or you need to shoot his face to coax out a roar. Getting him to open his mouth only took a regular beam shot. However, whilst the Spazer Beam certainly hits hard as I mentioned before, its sheer size meant that if Kraid's arm or his flying claws got in the way, it would completely block my shot, and with my slow rate of fire, it meant I had to wait for another entire moment to kind of reconvene and make another attack. It was a longer fight than most of my Kraid fights, but eventually we do win because it is still just Kraid, grabbing the various suit along the way and marking the end of the early game and the beginning of the mid-game. And now we've made it to the mid-game, which for me goes from Upper Norfair all the way to the wrecked ship. Now Norfair is extremely important for the run as we get two more major beam upgrades for the run. That first, of course, being the Wave Beam, which will do wonders for increasing our DPS potential, and the second, of course, being the Ice Beam, which will make getting past pesky normal mobs a breeze. With those two items in hand, we make our way to the surface of Zebes. Naturally, we grab the powerful power bombs on the way. I was worried ahead of the next two bosses, however. Crocker Meyer, but especially Fantoon, and decided to do some mid-game item hunting, grabbing 2 extra energy tanks to pad out my life total, and once I was satisfied, I said goodbye to Green Brinstar for good until the end of the game, and made my way to the next mini-boss, Crocker Meyer. Now, Crocker Meyer is unique in that you play a game of pushback where he moves backwards if you hit him in the mouth, and he tries to push you backwards with his attacks. Now, normal missiles make him move back the least, while super missiles make him move back the most. Sadly for me, a charged beam shot is equivalent to a missile. However, what's worse is the slow rate of fire, which gives the lava-loving reptile time to take back some ground, and what's worse is that his projectiles have a chance of countering mine, which can leave me reeling at times. Still, I have played this game over 30 times, so despite the annoyances and the good fight he puts up, Crocker Meyer goes down in an acidic grave. I obviously grabbed the post-fight energy tank and the much-needed grapple beam before making my way topside again to head for the final mid-game area, the wrecked ship. The wrecked ship obviously starts with the next main boss, Fantoon. He had me worried as the charge beam is slow to fire and he's a fast-moving boss that loves to spam projectiles that get in the way of my shots, and he's undamageable for most of the fight. Whilst the eyes were pesky, with a whopping 6 energy tanks at my disposal and a reserve tank, I really was able to simply out-attrition Fantoon here, especially given that he couldn't go into his enraged state, meaning he wasn't as hard-hitting as I'm used to. Inevitably, the ghost goes down and we're free to clear the rest of the ship. However, by now I have more than enough missiles and super missiles to open any door I need to, so I skip collecting extra missiles here except for the extra reserve tank, and inevitably I grab my final suit upgrade, the gravity suit. Now with my strongest suit, a ton of weapons that make my beam very powerful, and all the bombs I'm ever going to need, and 7 energy tanks, we leave the mid-game behind and begin the end game, heading into the briny depths of Meridia. Now, I'm afraid we'll be cutting Meridia fairly short, because I wish I could tell you the bosses here were interesting, but they weren't. I mean, Batwoon was Batwoon, I won't even bother showing you that clown. For Dragon, I am certain many of you would be concerned about how I'm going to get past those deadly turrets in his room as I cannot harm them with beams or power bombs. The solution was an elegant one. Ignore them. You see, when you ignore the turrets altogether, you will notice that one of the turrets is already broken and electrified, and that's all we really need. And so, I allowed Dragon to goo me with her mucus before picking me up and flying me closer to the broken turret, where I inevitably fried Dragon like a piece of tempura, to her death. Dragon was extremely free, long story short. The most important aspects of Meridia honestly would of course be the upgrades, namely the space jump, which greatly increases my agility, but more importantly the plasma beam, which gives my beams the added punch it needs ahead of lower Nerfair. And speaking of lower Nerfair, it is considered to be the most difficult part of any Super Metroid run, as it has a scary gauntlet of 3 bosses known for causing trouble. However, for me, the first 2 were pushovers. Starting with the Golden Torizo, the boss is already designed around only using beams, as it traditionally dodges your missiles. Therefore, I melt the mini-boss's health with only a dozen or so well-placed charge shots. Next is the usually dangerous Golden Ornstein and Smo duo. The usually dangerous Golden Pirate duo. However, to my surprise, it only takes 2 well-placed charge shots to shut them down. I also made sure to fight them one-on-one to make it easier. And that just leaves whom is usually the hardest boss in the game, that being Ridley himself. Could I defeat him with no missiles whatsoever? Well, see for yourself. He really got extremely frantic there at the end. No matter, with Ridley dead, I grab the energy tank in the room right after, and I also backtrack and make sure to grab the last energy tank to top off my health to go for max HP. This really leads us to the final part of the endgame, that being Taurean itself. I know what you're thinking.
Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself.
No, not that. I mean, did the Metroids destroy the run? Well, believe it or not, no. You see, if you freeze a Metroid and then use 3 power bombs, you kill the buggers dead, meaning I skate through the Metroids with the run still intact. The real troubles come from, as with my original missile-only challenge run, Mother Brain. You see, Phase 1 Mother Brain is irritating as literally only missiles can harm her. Not beams, not power bombs, literally only missiles. From a purely mechanical standpoint, you could say I definitely failed the run here. However, narratively speaking, Mother Brain really wasn't actually harmed here, as she was pretending to die just to whip out her second form and then beat our ass. That, and the rule states I cannot use missiles to kill anything, and Mother Brain isn't dead, so you could make that argument as well. Regardless, Mother Brain Phase 2 keeps the run alive as I spam my beam attacks to chip at her health until she brings out her super attack. The infant Metroid swoops in to save me and replenishes all my health, but Mother Brain finishes the Metroid off, but unwittingly gives me the Hyper Beam, which we finally and fittingly use to tear Mother Brain to shreds. With Mother Brain dead for good, we literally use the mandatory Hyper Beam to escape the crumbling planet Zebes, and we opt to leave the animals behind because...
Die, let it shrivel up and... Come on, who's with me, huh?
As we enter our spaceship, the Thrush Eterna, we watch Planet Zebes' last moments, and we find out that you can beat Super Metroid without the missiles! Well, depending on how you feel about the glorified cutscene that is Mother Brain Phase 1, but 99.9% of the run was entirely possible. Also, that song in the background, only real Raider fans will know, which is why I say, join the Discord, link in the description. Anyway, compared to the missile-only run, I can safely say this is much easier. While most boss fights end up being slower in the early and mid-game, by the end game, the beam is such a hard-hitting damage option that it makes up for the slow rate of fire. But that's all for today. Until then, as always, be safe, be wise, and please pray for a true peace in space.